control over systems is slipping faster than most realize. A quiet shift is happening in how complexity outpaces our ability to manage it. This matters because it directly impacts your work, your decisions, and the stability of the tools you rely on daily. As complexity grows unchecked, unexpected failures and inefficiencies becomes a new normal. This trend isn't random, it's rooted in deep structural changes in technology and organizations. Understanding these forces reveals why traditional control methods are failing. The consequences affect everything from your career to how industries adapt. What you need to know goes beyond surface-level explanations. By the way, this channel shares one bold insight like this every week. If this perspective is useful, consider subscribing. The gap between complexity and control isn't just widening, it's accelerating, and that's why it matters more now than ever. We live in a world where technology, bureaucracy, and social systems grow denser and more tangled every year. Yet human and institutional capacity to manage or even understand these systems does not keep pace. The mistake most people make is assuming that because tools and data multiply, control automatically improves. It doesn't. Complexity compounds faster than our ability to steer it, creating blind spots and vulnerabilities that are baked into the system. This imbalance fundamentally shifts power toward those who design and maintain the underlying architecture of these complex systems. It's no longer just about who has resources or capital. It's about who controls the levers embedded in the code, algorithms, and protocols that dictate system behavior. These gatekeepers operate with asymmetric knowledge and influence, often invisible to the average user or stakeholder. The consequence? Decision-making becomes centralized in the hands of a few tech elites, regulators, or engineers, who wield disproportionate control without democratic oversight or accountability. Institutional inertia further compounds this issue. As complexity balloons, organizations become risk-averse and increasingly reliant on automation and AI to handle routine decisions. This delegation creates feedback loops where errors or biases in automated processes amplify over time, eroding trust and reducing human oversight. When control slips away through automation, it's not just about efficiency anymore. It's about losing the ability to intervene or course-correct when things go wrong. Over time, this leads to brittle systems that can cascade into failure from small, unnoticed glitches or misaligned incentives. Another critical implication lies in workforce dynamics. As systems grow more complex and opaque, specialized expertise becomes a prerequisite for meaningful participation. This raises barriers to entry and concentrates knowledge within elite technical circles, marginalizing broader input. It accelerates a divide between those who understand and shape the system and those who merely use it. For workers, this means fewer opportunities to influence their environments or innovate independently. For society, it risks creating a technocratic class insulated from public scrutiny and detached from real-world consequences. Finally, the erosion of control invites new vulnerabilities to exploitation. Complex systems with opaque inner workings become prime targets for bad actors, from cybercriminals exploiting obscure loopholes to states weaponizing misinformation via algorithmic manipulation. Because the full scope of system interactions is poorly understood, defending against such threats becomes a guessing game, leaving entire sectors exposed. The stakes here are high: economic disruption, compromised privacy, and even threats to democratic institutions emerge from this growing gap between complexity and control. This growing concentration of control in the hands of technical gatekeepers also politicizes technology in unprecedented ways. When a handful of engineers or corporate leaders embed values, biases, or strategic priorities into algorithms, they effectively set the rules for entire populations without electoral input or public debate. These embedded decisions can privilege certain groups while disadvantaging others, entrenching systemic inequalities under the guise of neutral, data-driven logic. This shifts political power away from traditional institutions and into the shadows of code, making democratic checks and balances increasingly irrelevant or ineffective. The financial sector illustrates an immediate consequence of this shift. Algorithmic trading, risk modeling, and automated compliance systems dominate markets, yet their complexity surpasses regulatory comprehension. This opacity enables hidden systemic risks to build unchecked, as seen in flash crashes or the 2008 financial crisis's algorithmic precursors. Regulators scramble to keep pace, but lack the technical expertise and data transparency to intervene effectively. The result is an unstable financial ecosystem where a single algorithmic failure can cascade globally, threatening entire economies, while the public remains largely unaware of how their assets are managed or mismanaged. On a societal level, this dynamic accelerates a fragmentation of shared reality. As platforms use opaque algorithms to curate information flows, users become trapped in echo chambers driven by engagement-maximizing code rather than balanced content. The architects of these algorithms wield immense power to shape public opinion, not through persuasion, but through invisible prioritization. This undermines the foundational democratic principle of informed citizenry, fostering polarization and misinformation that no simple policy fix can undo. The complexity of these systems acts as a shield, insulating decision-makers from accountability and scrutiny. Meanwhile, the dependency on automated systems for critical infrastructure, from energy grids to healthcare, creates a paradox of vulnerability masked as resilience. While automation promises efficiency and scale, the interdependence of subsystems means a failure in one node can trigger widespread collapse. The lack of human-in-the-loop oversight further exacerbates this risk. When anomalies arise that don't fit predefined parameters, machines either fail silently or escalate errors. Emergency response frameworks are not designed for these layered cascading failures, exposing communities to prolonged outages, compromised safety, and economic losses with little recourse. Finally, the psychological impact on individuals navigating these intricate systems deserves attention. As control diminishes and transparency fades, people experience increased alienation and distrust toward institutions and technology. This frustration can fuel disengagement or radicalization, as individuals seek alternative narratives or systems that promise agency. The perception of helplessness in the face of incomprehensible complexity undermines social cohesion and civic participation, threatening the very fabric of collective problem-solving necessary to manage these systemic challenges. This erosion of control also intensifies a feedback loop, where mistrust breeds disengagement, which in turn accelerates system fragility. When users or employees feel powerless to influence complex systems, they withdraw effort and vigilance, leaving critical gaps in human oversight. This disengagement isn't just passive. It can manifest as active sabotage, workarounds, or the spread of misinformation as people seek to reclaim agency outside official channels. The consequence is a growing disconnect between system designers and those affected by their decisions, leading to brittle infrastructures that are more vulnerable to breakdowns triggered not only by technical faults, but also by human resistance. Moreover, this dynamic shifts organizational power hierarchies in subtle but profound ways. Middle management and frontline workers, traditionally the knowledge reservoirs for operational realities, lose influence as decision-making migrates upward or inward into opaque algorithms. This flattening of input channels strips organizations of adaptive capacity and institutional memory, increasing reliance on rigid one-size-fits-all automation. Ironically, as complexity rises, the ability to respond flexibly decreases, making institutions less resilient in crises. The result is a paradox where increased technological sophistication coincides with decreased organizational agility. The political ramifications extend beyond internal governance into geopolitics. Nations that control advanced algorithmic and AI architectures gain strategic leverage over others, not just economically, but in terms of information dominance and cyber warfare capabilities. This creates a new kind of global arms race centered on technological complexity and control, where transparency and cooperation take a backseat to secrecy and competitive advantage. Countries lagging behind face heightened vulnerability to infiltration, manipulation, or exclusion from critical digital infrastructure, deepening global inequalities and instability. On an individual level, the increasing reliance on algorithmic decision-making risks eroding personal autonomy in measurable ways. Credit scores, job applicant screenings, healthcare prioritization, all increasingly mediated by inscrutable systems, can lock people into cycles of disadvantage without clear means to contest or understand outcomes. This raises urgent ethical and legal questions.